All right, I'm John David Ebert, and welcome to my course on understanding astrology. By the end of this course, when we're completely finished with it, you should have the tools to read pretty much anyone's chart, especially your own. And I highly recommend getting a hold of, in addition to Rob Hand's textbook on horoscope symbols, which I'm using loosely as a loose skeleton to organize the class, Demetra George's workbook called Astrology for Yourself. It's still in print. It goes for something like $20 off of Amazon. I highly recommend getting it, and because writing out the exercises in the book with your hand will help imprint the knowledge into your psyche. So one of the things I want to do at first is to go back and look at the Aristotelian cosmology and the Ptolemaic as well that came after it. With Aristotle, we get these principles that correspond to these elements. And though the elements have been transformed, as we'll see in a second, I'm going to show you a little peek at the novel I'm writing right now, where the elements have been transformed into four fundamental forces now with regard to the Big Bang. So some things have changed, some things have not, though. There are certain things that the Ptolemaic cosmos got right. For instance, if you look at it here, it's always the Earth is at the center of the universe. Which is cosmologically, of course, not correct. But yet, what was correct about it is that we are incarnate souls on the lowest stratum of all of the cosmic strata that exist. And there's probably an infinity of them going upwards, with the physical plane being the lowest because it's the densest and it has the lowest frequency vibration. So in a sense, they did get some things correct. And the other thing that's correct about the Ptolemaic cosmology, as it turns out, is, and Rudolph Steiner says this, the Earth may not be the physical center of the solar system, but it's the spiritual center because that's where the human drama is taking place. So in a way, it still remains the center of our phenomenological experience on this earthly plane. Okay, so the four elements come out of these four principles. You have the dry, the hot, the cold, and the wet, according to Aristotle. Fire is a mixture of the dry with the hot. Earth is a mixture of dry with the cold. Water is a mixture of cold with wet. And air is a mixture of hot and wet. Now, these elements have directions. Fire goes straight up. Earth goes straight down. And in my novel, I've changed the traditional cosmology to put Earth here where it belongs, at the bottom. It should have been put at the bottom, although I realize that in doing that it messes up the schema with the four principles here. But the Earth is the bottom. Fire wants to get back to the heavens because that's where light came from. Everything in Aristotle is trying to get back to its place where it belongs. Fire belongs in the heavens with the stars, and Earth belongs down here. Air rises, so it goes up, but it spreads horizontally, whereas water goes down, but it too spreads horizontally. So what I've done in my, this is a peek from the novel that I'm working on right now, which is part 2 of what I call the Motorcycle Girl trilogy, which is a girl going through her father's notebooks, who is a genetic engineer and a kind of a master of all disciplines. And so what I've done is I've taken the traditional diagram with fire at the top, and I've put Earth at the bottom where it belongs. These two are the most opposite principles. And then water and air in the middle, where they also belong. There's a fifth element too, the ether, and the ether is made up of those cosmic Ptolemaic spheres that we were looking at just a minute ago here, and it turns these spheres with perfect circular motion. And they tried all kinds of things. What Arthur Kessler calls the Ferris wheel cosmos was what came out of this, with these planets having their own little epicycles within epicycles to try to make the math come out right, and they never could. And the whole thing about Copernicus in the middle of the 16th century was he was trying to restore the perfect circular motions of the planets that Plato said that they should be in. So that was the main reason. In a way, he was a conservative, he wasn't a Promethean figure as he's been painted. He was trying to get back to Plato. And sort of inadvertently switched to the correct cosmology. So the girl is looking at her father's notebooks, and the second volume here is called Motorcycle Girl Descends into Hell, because it corresponds to the middle phase of the hero's journey, The first book being Separation from the Known World, the second being The Descent into the Underworld, like the difference between the first Star Wars film followed by The Empire Strikes Back. That's the descent into the underworld, and then the return. So it follows that mythological arc, Campbell's arc. So here's the father's modified diagram, which in the book will be referred to as the monad, because it will undergo a whole bunch of transformations. So she'll come in here and sort of heckle her father, he represents science, and she's an artist, so she represents the arts. And she comes along and says, so there's 4 forces now, the father says. So they should have a diagram too, and maybe it would look something like this. So she identifies electromagnetism with fire, gravity with earth, the weak force with water, because water has a female valency and is therefore traditionally considered weak, not anymore, of course, and then strong, corresponding to air and fire. Water, as we'll see in Demetria George's workbook, corresponds to the emotions, and air corresponds to the intellect. So it's rather interesting that we still wind up with 4. Spengler would say we traded out the Greek atoms for the West's forces, because the forces are Faustian, whereas the elements are building blocks, and the Greeks like to build things. They have a very tactile bias in their culture. And then so as the father's going through the stages of the Big Bang, and she keeps transforming the monad. Photons at the top correspond to fire. The still hypothetical gravitons would correspond to earth. And then the bosons would correspond to water. And the gluons, which glue quarks together, would correspond to the air principle. Bosons are the weak force, the particle form of the weak force. So there's that, and then it keeps transforming when she plugs it into astrology and connects the lines together to form a diamond, which is the monad for this book. Sort of like John Dee's hieroglyphic monad, but it's sort of my version of it this time around. And she puts the fire sign of Leo at the top, the earth sign of Taurus at the bottom, the water sign of Scorpio over here, and then the air sign of Aquarius over here. And she keeps thinking it's strange how some things have changed, but they really haven't. It all depends on how creative you get with your cosmological knowledge. Here's another monad of the quarks, and since there's 6 quarks, it's a little off kilter, but we still have a top quark and a bottom quark, an up quark and a down quark, and a charm quark and a strange quark. And she remarks, quarks are very strange. I don't know about charming, though. And then, let's see, I think there's another one where, and then after the Big Bang has happened and it's gone through its basic stages, and then it starts actually creating physical, literal elements. Hydrogen is the element, more or less, and it's flammable. Deuterium is a heavier form of hydrogen, and helium is lighter than air, and lithium floats on water. They all have connections to the elements, don't they? The original 4 elements. And so those are the transformations that she goes through, just to have fun with the cosmology, but also to update it. It's the job of the artist to update the cosmology of his or her time so that they are informed mythologically, hermetically, and cosmologically. And that's sort of what we're doing in this course. All right, so that's the Ptolemaic world. And here's an image of it this is Dante's version of it, where he's writing this about 1300, and we have the Empyrean at the top. The Empyrean is the highest, is the world's ceiling, and the realm of God and the angels. That's the realm they inhabit there. And then Earth is at the center of the universe, so everything drops down to it as the heaviest element, and it's usually symbolized by a cross, which simply means the 4 elements, as we've been looking at. And there's the sphere of the fixed stars, but then there are the planets which are wanderers. The word planet comes from Greek planeti, wanderer. We have Saturn, which was the highest of the time, then Jupiter, then Mars, then the Sun, then Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. So note that the Sun has 3 planets above it and 3 below it. So there was already a tradition of thinking of it as the center of the solar system. It already kind of was, because it's in the middle of things. Okay, and then let's take a look over here at the workbook. I think we're done with that material to create for us the basic frame. Now, Rob Hand begins, if you read the introduction to horoscope symbols, he divides his book into the 4 elements of astrology, or the 4, that's probably not a good word to use because it might be confusing, but the 4 aspects, or that's not even a good word, but his way of dividing it into 4, starting with the planets as points, plus also other points, such as asteroids and nodes and so forth. So you've got the points first. Then the angular relationships, which are called aspects. They are angles, but the correct term for them in astrology is aspects. And then the zodiac. He goes through the signs of the zodiac. He doesn't get to the zodiac until about halfway through his book, whereas this is Demetra George's Astrology for Yourself workbook that I've got up open here. She starts with the zodiac, which we'll look at here a little more closely. And then he moves to the mundane position, which is the houses. And the houses are simply the same signs as the zodiac, but they're organized spatially in a different manner. Okay, so here we have all 12 of the signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and they go in threes, and it's best mnemonically to memorize them as having that rhythm of 3. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, pause. Cancer, Leo, Virgo, pause. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, pause. Capricorn, Aquarius, and the fish, Pisces. And then so let's look at what they are in terms of what they refer to. She's got a very helpful chart here, I think. Aries is the I am. It refers to the ego, me, my sense of myself. Taurus is I have, material wealth and possessions. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, I think. Mercury is the planet of the intellect. Cancer is emotional, I feel. Leo is very ostentatious, very extroverted, I show. Virgo is I analyze. It's also a work sign that's ruled, it's connected with the element of earth, which is pragmatic, and has to do with your work routine and environment. Libra is I relate, one-on-one relationships with others. It's directly opposite from Aries. Aries is me. 180 degrees across is me relating to each person that I encounter. Scorpio is I transform. It's ruled by Pluto, which is the planet of transformation, of death and rebirth. It can put you through a really rough process, Pluto can. Sagittarius is the archer, I seek. That's the higher mind, which is directly opposite Gemini, which is the lower mind. Capricorn is I make use of things. Capricorn is it's associated with institutions and with the public and career and so forth. Aquarius means I'm different. That is not just I am with Aries, but with Aquarius, it's how I relate in my tribe. What group of friends do I have or connections? What is my tribe? And Aquarius also has to do, because it's ruled by Uranus, and it also has to do with science and technology. Pisces is I imagine. It's ruled by Neptune. They both refer to the collective unconscious, essentially. That's what they are. Then she's got some applications over here which you can look at and go down if you order for the workbook. And then a helpful diagram here so you can see visually where all the signs are at and in terms of the year, the cycle of the year. So as I said, here we have Aries opposite Libra. I am versus how I relate one-on-one with other people. So Aries is also associated with beginnings. That's why when the vernal equinox enters March 21st, in the West, we use the tropical zodiac, which means that we keep the tropics in mind. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. So it's nailed to the 4 seasons, although in the sidereal zodiac, which is used in Vedic astrology, they stick with where the actual positions of the planets are with respect to the background of the fixed stars. And we're not in Aries. When the vernal equinox comes around, we're still in Pisces. It takes 2,000 years to precess through 2,160 years to precess backwards through one sign of the zodiac. And that's basically 1 degree every 72 years. And then for a complete precession, which is known as the Great Year, It's 25,920 degrees. That's a complete cycle because of the Earth's wobble. As it turns, it has a slight wobble, and that's what causes the precession. So we'll look at the tropical chart in the West has some advantages that the sidereal chart doesn't, but sometimes, in my experience, the sidereal chart is correct in my experience. Goethe, for instance, was born at 6 degrees into Virgo, which is here. But that dude was a Leo, if ever I've seen one. That dude was he was always on display somewhere saying, look at me, I'm awesome here, I'm awesome over there, I'm awesome upside down. He's definitely a Leo, there's no doubt about that. In my own case, though, my signs would slip back, and the precessional slippage is 23.5 degrees right now. And I have what's called a stellium of planets in Cancer, which would push me back into Gemini. And Geminis are flighty and extroverted and shallow. None of that suits my personality at all. I'm definitely a Cancer. So in my case, the tropical makes sense. In Goethe's case, the sidereal makes sense. So it's kind of an antinomy that we'll have to work through and see what we think. But so we've got then Aries with March 21st. And Aries is a cardinal sign. The middle sign is always fixed, and the lower sign is always mutable and changing. So cardinal sign, March 21st, and then the mutable fixed, Taurus fixed, the Earth. Taurus is always very solid, April 21st. And then the mutable Gemini twins, May 21st. And then we're done with the springtime triplicity, you might say. And then over here, we move into the summer triplicity with the cardinal sign here of Cancer. And then here, that's June 21st, July 22nd then is Leo, and then which is fixed, and then Virgo, which is mutable, August 23rd, and then Libra, September 23rd, and then Scorpio, October 23rd, and then Sagittarius, November 22nd. So that's the autumn triplicity, and then the winter triplicity then with Capricorn on December 21st, Aquarius on January 21st, and Pisces on February 9th. You can sort of see these are not accidentally arranged. It sort of tells a story of the sun going down into the underworld in December, like the goat goes up high on top of the mountain, but can also then, it also has a fish symbol. It's half goat, half fish, which is actually the Sumerian god Enki, who was lord of the watery abyss, the Apsu. That's why it's connected with the watery abyss. So the sun has plunged here, and it's in the abyss with Aquarius. Even though it's an air sign, all the imagery is watery. And then Pisces down in the abyss, as though these fish were embryos waiting to be reborn during the springtime, when the ram, whom we last saw over here, hops up and out. And now we're off and ready to start a new year and plow those fields with the bull and so forth. You can have a lot of fun with the imagery of astrology, make your own connections and so forth. In addition to the official meanings, if you're smart and good with intuition, you can do a lot of things. Different astrologers will give you different readings, but they should be basically the same because the core values are essentially the same, but there is a lot of nuance. So then the four elements, which we just looked at, fire is the identity principle. I don't agree there. I think that fire actually is the principle of illumination. These others are correct, though. Earth is matter, air is mental, and water is feeling. But fire has to do with illumination and realization, not identity. So in that case, I would disagree with that particular astrologer. And so we should look at the triplicities, which are the elements assigned to each of these as groups of three. So we have the fire signs, which is Aries and Leo and Sagittarius. Those are all fire signs. And then we have the air signs, which are Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. Those are more mental. And then the earth signs are more pragmatic, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Those are all pragmatic signs. Note that. Taurus is your stuff, Virgo is how you were getting that stuff, working your job, and Capricorn is how you're presenting it out into the public with your work. what are you doing in public with the work that Virgo has dug up and that Taurus has plowed, and so forth. And then so we have the water signs, Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Pisces being the ending of the year, and Scorpio, when Scorpio rises, it's 180 degrees opposite of Orion. And so when it rises, it has stung Orion and plunged him into the abyss. Orion arises out of the southeast and then sets down into the southwest, and it takes about 70 days for it before it comes back again. It's tied to the Egyptian mummification process of 70 days. Ideally, the mummification process should take place to imitate Orion, because Orion is Osiris for the Egyptians, and the star that comes after him, Sirius, is Isis. Okay, so let's take a look at what else she's got here for. So then she gives you an element wheel. I think you can cut it out and put a central diagram that will rotate. You clip it on with like a paper clip, and it'll rotate, so you can find your way around the zodiac and get used to it. There's also yang and yin, but I think those matter less. Yang is masculine, so it's fire and air. Yin is feminine, and so water and earth tend to be feminine. I don't find much use for yin-yang polarities. I guess they work, but I have no use for them. And then they have all these written exercises for you to go through to get yourself used to reading the zodiac and knowing where the signs are, which signs are cardinal, fixed, mutable, which signs are triplicities for the elements. Okay, maybe we should explain a bit here about the horizon, as Rob Hand does in his introduction. Let's see if she's got a model for that. No, I don't see one. Okay. Let's see. So basically I should pull up a chart here real quick. Let's pull up the chart of Rudolph Steiner and take a look at it. Okay, let's see, we can look at it. Well, Astro Theme tends to have more colorful and easy to read charts. So let's see. There he is, the maestro of all things spiritual. Very possibly my favorite individual of all time, Rudolph Steiner. Very possibly. The Pharaoh Akhenaten is a runner-up, though. Okay, let's see. So here it is, and so what we're looking at is a snapshot of the horizon when Rudolph Steiner was born. And let's see, his birth data, is it? Yeah, here, he was born February 25th, 1861. And so that makes him, his sun sign is Pisces. All right, down here. So the ascendant, the AC here, is the eastern horizon, and the descendant over here is the western horizon. And the MC, or medium Seelie, is the noontime position, the culmination position, and the anti-culmination position, or lower heaven. The Imam Seelie is down here, the midnight position. Okay, and so everything that is beneath the horizon pertains to the personal sphere, your private zone. Everything that is above the horizon pertains to the public. And this is why when you pick up, notice that he's got a peacock's fantail down here. If he was a pop star or a celebrity like Madonna or Bjork or something like that, all the peacock fantail would be up here. All their energies are very, very public. And then so that's the basic snapshot picture. And the planets, they appear to move when we're out on the earth and we're looking at the sky. They appear to move clockwise from east to west. And birds build their bird nests, as I've learned from the Native Americans. They build their bird nests in a clockwise fashion because they're imitating the planets. And so when the Navajo build a hogan, for instance, which is an 8-sided structure, it's built on the model of a bird's nest, and in a clockwise, everything is clockwise for the Navajo because they're following the planets and the way they move across the sky. But in actual fact, though, it's an optical illusion because the planets are actually moving counterclockwise, and they will move counterclockwise and make transits to your chart. As they go around it, they'll activate and light up the archetypes. Now, I don't think anybody knows how astrology works. We just know that it does because it's demonstrable, and the transits, as we'll see when we get to them, really do make it concrete and empirically demonstrable. They behave exactly the way astrology says that they should, and the events of your life correspond to those archetypes for a given period of time. Make no mistake about that at all. It works, but it works on a subtle energetic plane. There's a different energy plane, an astral plane, or subtle energetic, whatever you want to call it, that these energies work upon and through us because they're tied in with our astral bodies, our chakras, our astral bodies. They're etherically woven together with the etheric energies. It's like as though the solar system were a sort of cosmic loom, you might say, of where these energies are weaving and weaving and weaving through your astral body. And it's almost as though because they map your karma, when you're born, it's as though it unfolds like the mainspring of an old-fashioned wind-up clock that you wind up and you just let it unwind. That's sort of how astrology works for the personal astrology. We'll look at mundane astrology elsewhere, possibly in the second class. That has to do with the astrology of world events. But here we're taking a kind of psychological approach, or we're looking at the, not from a Jungian approach, because I'm not a Jungian. I'm much more anthroposophic, but still not. I'm just sort of my own guy, let's say. Okay, let's see what he has. He has Pluto conjunct Mars, a very strong power drive to succeed. Very original here with, he's got Moon square Uranus and Uranus square Sun, and that is the archetype of innovation. When you put Uranus and the Sun together, as they are here in a 90-degree square, that's innovation. This is going to be somebody who thinks outside the box, because Uranus is the planet of science, technology, and new things. Uranus always brings new things in. Saturn is the planet of old things. Saturn is always, it has to do with karma, rigor, death, discipline. Saturn makes things difficult. It's the planet of obstacles. Let's see here, he's got Saturn square Uranus, and then the moon hit down there with Venus, the Sun, and Mercury. But the spiritual science is over here. He calls anthroposophy spiritual science. The astrologer Robert Powell is an anthroposophical astrologer who points this out. Steiner himself never did astrology. He missed the boat on it, which is odd given how much of his work is about the planets and the beings that live on their within their astral planes. Neptune, of course, rules the imagination and the collective unconscious, and all things spiritual and mystical. And here he's got a very sharp intellect because it's conjunct the Sun. That makes it bright. So he's bringing illumination. He's using his intellect to illumine the collective unconscious, which he would call the astral plane. What Jung was calling the collective unconscious is really what Steiner called the astral plane. And they're conjunct. That is spiritual science. Neptune, Mercury. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. This stuff is, it works. And then he's got Jupiter conjunct his midheaven, which is great. Although Saturn, if you get Saturn in the 10th house, as I have it as well, that will slow down your career to where you're more likely to have late life success, like in your 60s. Steiner slipped a certain way into his 60s. It might have been 64, 65 when he died. I forget exactly when. Seems like it was 1924. But yeah, he had late life success too. But it's got Jupiter there, which is the kingly planet. That's a great thing. If he had been a politician, that would be a perfect placement for a politician. All right, we'll stop there for that introduction, and we'll discuss all of this in class in more detail.